everyone. Welcome to Artist Insight, where we spotlight some of the best visual artists in the Kansas City metro area. My name is Brian Vole, and I'm the local arts librarian for Johnson County Library. Our mission for Artist Insight is to share conversations with artists about their work, their background, and what inspires them. Artist Insight is an extension of Johnson County Library's exhibitions program, which brings some of the best local visual artists to the walls and spaces of Johnson County Library art galleries. Our new season of local art at the library began with the new year and will run until April 21st. Check our webpage for complete information about who's showing where and for interviews with all of our artists at jocolibrary.org/events/exhibitions. So our guest is Jean McGuire. Jean McGuire is a Kansas City native who returned to painting a few years ago after a 40-year hiatus. Even though she wasn't actively working on her art, her ability to view the world in colors and shapes never went away. She was able to take those observations and transfer them to her canvas while maintaining the curiosity and wonder of a newcomer. As she herself states, I am an experimental artist who has no fear of trying something new. I have produced work by throwing paint, using my fingers instead of brushes, by working with the detail that portraiture requires. And I have explored the vistas that abstract works offer. I love creating my own colors by using a limited color palette, which increases the artistic challenge no matter what process I am using. You can see Jean McGuire's artwork at the Oak Park Library now until April 21st. Welcome, Jean. It's great to have you. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Well, we have a selection of your art that I'm going to go through as we talk. And I was wondering if you can start by, for those who haven't yet seen your work on display at Oak Park Library, could you describe for us what they can expect to see?
There is a lot of color in this display. I found myself, like many artists, somewhat creatively blocked in the isolation of COVID, especially in the early days. And being able to return to the studio and having the creativity come back, I have found I have really returned to a lot of color. I tend to use a limited palette, just use blue, yellow, red, and white. And when you mix your own colors that way, you get very, very vivid colors instead of when they come straight from the tube. The other thing in this show that I like is that there's a real variety in what is showing. There's abstract, there is portraiture, there are palette knife paintings, so there's a really wide variety, and yet they all share the same basic color palette, so they play really well together, in my opinion.
When I look at some of this work, and I see a lot of geometric shapes, and I wonder, and some that are more nebulous, like this one, that don't quite have a lot of identifiable shapes. So, what can you tell us about the forms in some of these paintings and why you've chosen geometric shapes in some of them and more abstract images in others?
About mid-year of 21, I became fascinated with trying to portray the same reference photo using as many different methods as I could. So like the one you have up on the screen now, that is a seascape that I just mentally broke down into the triangular geographic shape. But then there's also a companion one which has the same color palette, which was just playing with a palette knife.
I see the seascape now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, Same reference photo, just different methods. And I'm still really exploring that concept.
Boy, now I'm seeing things with new eyes. That is, I love that. Um, Thank you for that insight there. You stated that you have only in recent years returned to painting after a 40-year hiatus. So what originally got you into painting? And then are you self-taught or were you formally educated as an artist, formally trained as an artist?
Um, I always painted as a child. In fact, in my bedroom, I have a little piece that I painted in first grade that my mother always held on to. And when she passed away, I took it back, and it's kind of nice to see that as a reference point. Um, but my parents were always very encouraging all through high school. If they could get me into art classes, they did. I always pursued it in high school. But then after I graduated from high school, my insecurities of not being able to paint the way the Grand Masters did, go figure, uh, made me give it up, which, that was part of my path. I don't really regret it. But in fact, and I'm just checking my own notes, I can very clearly remember at age 8 getting in trouble because I got oil paint on a new outfit. So by dating it that way, I can tell you my parents had oil paints in my hand by the time I was 8. So that was tremendously encouraging. Um, I have taken classes in the last couple of years. Most of them have been with Lacey Swift, who is a local artist who does figurative work. And every time I take one of her classes, I can see my work grow. But as far as formal training, a lot of this I'm self-taught, which I'm kind of glad of because nobody restricted me. I didn't feel like I had to follow rules. I could go experiment any way I wanted to.
So as a follow-up to that, Jane, when you did return to painting after such a long period away, what had you learned about yourself as an artist that you didn't know before?
Two main things, like you mentioned in my bio, I didn't consciously realize it, but I was still breaking things down into colors and shapes mentally as I observed the world. I think that's something artists just have in them. So I got back into it and leveled up relatively quickly, which I was very glad of. So you never really lose that eye. It's just a different way of working and looking at the world. I've had friends look at my pieces and say, "What made you put that color there?" And it's truly how I break down color in my brain. I see oranges and greens. I see reds mixed in with the blues. I mean, they are all, the colors are there, just whether your eye picks them up or not. But mainly after returning, I felt like my first love had come back into my life. Growing up in the 60s and the early 70s, when I was still in school, it was always, "That's great, love that you do that. What are you going to do to make money?" And so I just sort of pushed that aside. And coming back to it, I cannot explain how deeply grateful I am that it's come back into my world. Pretty cool way to live.
Indeed, indeed. So take us behind the scenes of your creative process. How often do you paint and what's your studio like?
Okay, I try to paint at least 5 times a week. I have recently been working on a public arts project that for the last 2 months has had me in there 3 to 4 hours a day, every day of the week, just trying to reach deadline on that. I'm almost done, so I get to return to my own work. But yeah, my normal process is about 5 times a week. I am not good at painting at home. In the isolation of COVID, I did send up Actually, this space I'm sitting in now got set up as my studio, and it was very hard for me to make myself create. A, because of the block, and B, there's just something about getting up and leaving the house that makes it feel more of an obligation. Whereas for me, if I'm at home, I can always do laundry. I can always find something else to do to keep me from actually following the process. My current studio, I moved into the Wonder Lofts, which is supported by Kansas City Artists Coalition. And I have one of the studios there. And quite frankly, I can't wait to get this public arts piece out of my studio and get back to just pursuing my muse.
I'm glad you mentioned the Artist Coalition, and I forgot to mention that your show is brought to us through our partnership with the Johnson County Artist Coalition. And I was wondering how you got connected with them and what that experience has been like.
The Artist Coalition is so supportive of artists. And so probably about 5 years ago, I signed up and became a member. Probably one of the best networking opportunities I've ever had personally or professionally. I will give a plug for the artists of Kansas City. I've never met a more supportive group. There's not a lot of competitiveness. It's, hey, have you seen this show? Your work would be great for it. Have you thought about entering this? It's really supportive, and Kansas City Artist Coalition really encourages that mentality in town. So it's one of the best moves I ever made, was joining the Artist Coalition. And the fact that I have a studio in one of their spaces makes it even better.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to mention that Oak Park Library is one of 2 locations that we have basically created annex galleries for the Kansas City Artist Coalition. Blue Valley and Oak Park Libraries serve as annex galleries for the Artist Coalition. So we're very, very happy about that and about our partnership. So let's talk a little bit more about your own creativity, Jean. What do you see as the biggest challenge for you creatively?
The biggest challenge for me creatively, and it's ironic, I find a blank canvas one of the most intimidating things I've ever seen. Another friend of mine spoke the other day about how all she sees is the potential, and all I see is how intimidating it is to actually put my mark on there. So once I have learned, just paint anything, get paint on that canvas or whatever surface I'm working on. And then once I break that intimidation, it all starts flowing a lot more smoothly. The other thing, as I referenced earlier, I let go of art for all those years because I didn't think I was very good at it. I didn't think I had the talent. And so from all that, what I've learned is I don't have to be the best at anything that I do. I have to do my best. And that's been real freeing once I realized, no, I don't do work like Rembrandt, but nobody does work like Jean McGuire but me. So getting over that intimidation has really helped me move forward. And again, just the freedom of being experimental is wonderful. But yeah, the other thing, let me see. The other thing is I wish I were the type of artist that could paint all day. I have found for myself after 2 or 3 hours, I start just what they call pushing paint. And I have to step away and give the canvas a break. I frequently refer to it as setting the painting in the corner and letting it think about it. Because anytime I've tried to push past that barrier, I've ended up having to paint over and start over. So I wish I could sit and paint all day. I'd get a lot more done.
How do you know when one of your paintings is done? I'm looking at we can talk about this one here that we've got up, but how do you know when when this is done?
They usually tell you when you're done or when they need more. This was a landscape reference. And so the dark, about 2/3 of the way up, is like a landline with a skyline at the top and snow reflecting the colors at the bottom. So that was kind of how I knew that one was done, was when I got those lines to where I wanted them. This one was actually the triangular paintings that are showing, or what I call the kaleidoscope paintings. I did those freehand. Uh, I did not block out the triangles to start with. I just started painting triangles in different colors and letting them build and spread. But working from a reference photo tells you when it's done. But again, you've got to listen
Mm.
to the painting. It'll tell you what it needs and it'll tell you when you're done. And if you walk away too soon, you can always come back to it.
Yeah, I know that's a hard question to answer. And it's one that I like to ask on occasion because it's such a it can be such a hard question to answer. But
It
yeah,
sounds
I
so
like that.
woo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But until you actually do it, it's hard to
right.
really understand that. Right.
Right.
So I was wondering if you can tell us, and we can dive into um, some of these inspirations behind your art and I guess life, Gene. Um, what can you tell us about uh, Ninth Street Women? And we've got Leonard Cohen here, and we've got a Georgia O'Keeffe biography. So why did you choose these? What have they? How have they informed your art?
Well, they literally sing to me. Leonard Cohen is usually what's playing when I'm painting here for the last year or so. I find his music inspirational. There's really no other word. He delves deeply into philosophy and relationships. Something I just learned the other day that I absolutely adore. He suffered from lifelong depression, crushing
Mm.
depression that medicine did not touch. And yet he claimed that in his 70s, our brain chemistry changes as we age. And in his 70s, the depression went away on its own. And so the fact that he lived with that dark place for so long, made it through, and then came out is just amazing. Plus, I just think his work kept getting better and better as he got older. Same thing with Georgia O'Keeffe. She was one of the first females to get national and international notoriety for her paintings at a time when women were really pretty much just relegated to doing pretty drawings in the drawing room. And the fact that she did pretty raw paintings, uh, detailed, beautiful, but raw subject matter, and was still able to achieve that level as a woman. And she sang her own song. She did not follow a conventional lifestyle for most of her life. She was a bit of a bohemian. All that is just amazing, which I can then wrap into the Ninth Street Women. And I can't remember, it's been a while since I read it, but I believe it is 5 different modern artists from the modern era of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And it breaks down their challenge, and they had the same thing. Women were, in common vernacular, side pieces. They did not do important work. They supported the men who did the important work. And the
Hmm.
fact that they were able to make their own mark on the art world of that time, that's admirable. They did it their way. So I guess
One
that's
of
the
the
coolest. Yeah.
one of the artists that is covered in Ninth Street Women is Grace Hardigan, and Grace Hardigan is one of my favorite
Ah,
painters.
okay.
And I do see, especially um, a lot of her abstract work from, I guess, the 50s and 60s. I see a lot of that in your art.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you. That is quite a compliment. It
Yeah, she's an artist who only got better as she went along. Um, so yeah, thank you,
awesome.
thank you
Thank you.
for these recommendations, Jean. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and let me get you the contact information up here. If you'd like to learn more about Jean McGuire and her work, visit artbyjeanmcguire.com. And I guess this is your Instagram handle as well, at art
Correct.
by Jean McGuire. And you can see more of her artwork there as well. For more information on Johnson County Library programs and services, visit jocolibrary.org. And my name is Brian Vole, and you can always send me an email at voleb@jocolibrary.org. Thank you again, Jean. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure.